I actually am going to say a few words about what Boeing is doing, what my team is doing at the Boeing company. Going to talk for the next 10 and 15 minutes, share a little bit about how we've matured some of our augmented reality pilots, specifically in manufacturing, and how we are now working to standardize some of the technology we've developed, and we're calling it the BARC, the Boeing Augmented Reality Kit. The goal is that this will be available to many or all of our production programs for them to use if they see use cases for augmented reality. So we actually have a long history in AR. I've given a few talks at AW before in other conferences, and I always like to show this picture. It goes back to the late 1980s. And this is two of our researchers, Tom Cordell and Dave Meisel, were up in the Puget Sound area, up in Everett, in the commercial airplane factory. And this is one of their prototypes. He's wearing, obviously, an early version headset, and he's seeing very basic 2D line instructions on how to build up a wire harness. So we've been doing this kind of work for a long time. Obviously, the technology was not ready. This was way before its time. But we've been thinking about these things for quite a long time. Now, of course, technology is far more mature, much more available, and so we're doing some more a continuation of what was started over 30 years ago. I always like to start with a few definitions, especially for, at least in the Boeing community, we're trying to standardize or come to some agreement about what different devices make sense for using on different applications, different workflows, and what we call different types of technologies. So we've kind of honed in, at least the technical community at Boeing has honed in on these four kind of baseline standardized terms, and I know this doesn't agree maybe 100% with everybody, but at least it's what we're trying to come to a conclusion on. Everyone's familiar with virtual reality, everything's virtually generated. We call informed reality things like Google Glass, maybe a Vuzix display that is kind of often in your peripheral vision, probably not spatially registered, but is taking some content and is showing it to you on a wearable. We call that informed reality. Augmented reality, everyone is familiar with what that means, and we call mixed reality basically augmented reality that handles occlusions in real time, so real objects can occlude virtual objects. Now, the BARC tool that we're standardizing really only deals with augmented and mixed reality. We have other work, lots of other work going on around the company using other types of displays, informed reality and virtual reality, but the BARC tool only deals with AR and MR. So, of course, there are a lot of devices out there now, and there's more coming. Seems every other week there's a new device available. But in my opinion, only a few devices on the market can do true AR or true mixed reality, and I've circled a few of them here. The requirements, the technology requirements for doing AR are actually very steep. They're very difficult because the tracking is usually the one that causes most issues. Many devices, I've put some of them up on here, either don't track themselves, or they're not able to display in your direct line of sight, or they just don't lend themselves. The form factor just doesn't lend itself for generating an AR display. So most of our BARC, AR, MR work is focused on tablets, cell phones, the Daiquiri Smart Helmet, and the HoloLens. There are other devices that can do it, obviously. We're focusing on those four to begin with. So this is the current standard that we are using for augmented reality in manufacturing today. And it's only on tablet computers. And I know if you go down to the expo hall tomorrow, you'll probably see a lot more wearables than you will tablets. But we're still believing that wearables have a little ways to go before we can truly implement them in production in our factories. Now, there are some use cases where it makes sense. However, we're thinking the tablets are still probably got a lot of mileage in them before wearables get to where we think they need to be. So tracking a tablet is difficult, so you can see typically what we'll do is our current standard is to install a tracking system around a work volume. This system here is from Vicon. We also use other manufacturers such as ART and others. So we'll outfit a cell like this. This cell is in El Segundo, just by the Los Angeles airport. We've got 8 tracking cameras there. The cell is about 40 feet by 60 feet, and those tracking cameras give us sub-millimeter accuracy anywhere throughout that work cell. So we, like I said, we use tablets. We've created tablet holders, 3D designed and printed, that hold markers for the Vicon or the tracking cameras to interact with. And then, of course, because usually people need both hands, depending on the job, but more than likely they're going to need both hands to do the job, we'll put the tablet on an arm like that. It's a zero-G arm from Equipoise. and that allows them to move the tablet around, position it where they want to, and keep their hands free. So this is the standard we're working with now. We've deployed this tool to over 5 locations now, 5 different programs around the Boeing company, across 4 of our sites across the country, across the enterprise. So these have been mostly pilot work, and we're trying to understand the use cases where it makes sense, where we can get the most value out of it, and get feedback from the mechanics and technicians who are using it so that we can continue to develop it. Moving forward, or before I move forward, this is the block diagram for that system. This one, again, only uses a tablet. We're not using wearables really yet. We are in the research realm and in the labs, but in the shop floor, we're only just getting into wearables. It's divided into 3 blocks there. You can see for tracking, the BARC tool has really 3 options. It's either 2 motion capture vendors, so we've coded interfaces for, so we can stream in their tracking data, or an old school fiducial marker. Sometimes a marker makes sense. If you're in a cargo hold of an aircraft, or an area where it's very, it's difficult to track using any kind of outside-in system, and it's a small volume, sometimes a marker just makes sense. The core functionality block is really just software. We've put a lot of work into calibrations. We want mechanics to be able to calibrate AR systems quickly and accurately, to make sure that the content, work instructions, whatever they are aligned correctly. So we put a lot of work into that. The digital content usually comes from the program itself. It could be CAD models of the design. It could be custom 3D generated work instructions or stay out zones, whatever the job may be. Content will come from the program. We're developing Unity applications to display that content and register it, and then it will be displayed on a tablet. Now going forward, we have some bigger goals in mind, obviously, like most other people. We're currently developing a Unity application that's going to be deployable to multiple platforms. However, we're focusing on these 4, and I've put some of my thoughts here on the benefits, the pluses and minuses of each one. I still believe there is really no one platform that will meet all use cases in manufacturing. Some programs have a higher tolerance for cost, so they can afford high accuracy, big tracking systems because they need the best accuracy. In terms of robustness, different devices are obviously more mature, more robust. The technology readiness level, I rate tablets and cell phones to be highest because we're just more, they've been around for longer. The CRL stands for cultural readiness level, and that's really how adoptable are these things, how are our population going to adapt and use these things. And again, tablets and cell phones, because they've been around longer and everyone has them, I think they're more likely to be adopted quicker. However, of course, wearables are starting to become a bigger thing now, so I don't think it'll be long before they become adopted more easily. And then usability in manufacturing, nobody wants to hold anything, so tablets is not great, but it's one way to do things. Wearables obviously are the way to go because if you keep both your hands free. So I've provided some ratings there. But so we're developing our BARC tool so it can be deployed on these 4 platforms because we realize that some jobs, some programs, some applications are going to dictate using a tablet. There may be safety things to consider about putting a wearable on a person in a factory in a hazardous environment, so maybe tablets are the way to go. Other areas, maybe tablets just aren't practical, maybe you're in a confined space, so a wearable might be the way to go. So our application will run on multiple platforms. So I have a couple of examples of some of the use cases we're working on. One would be, as we've seen a couple of times this morning, step-by-step task guidance, which is pretty straightforward. Everyone kind of begins with this one, I think. This video is an early version of the BARC tool running. It's on a Windows tablet. You can see here we've just animated some CAD models, the design models of a part going into a tooling fixture. Pretty straightforward. Probably don't need AR to communicate this. This was done for a demonstration for some of our executives. You can see some of the mechanics using the tool. In the bottom right-hand picture, they're showing a lot of wiring on top of one of our assemblies. They're using it to get an understanding of what the design, how it should be built, how it should look like when it's built. That arrow pops up on the screen there. If you look away from the instruction, you'd be surprised when you give somebody a tablet how many times they'll kind of look at their feet and say it's not working. You say, well, you have to look over here. So we put that arrow there to help with that. Another use case would be interference checks, and particularly in high-value, low-rate assembly. for instance, like a satellite, different modules are assembled in different work cells, and when we try to do the mating, there can be interference issues. So we've tried showing one half of a mate virtually and another half will be real. So in this case, the radiator panel is real, the colored object is virtual. And if you look at the bottom left-hand image, you can see one wire bundle has been routed incorrectly. And if you look at the CAD for that, the CAD actually shows a radius for that bundle to clear that green piece of structure, but it wasn't built that way. So we were able to detect that ahead of time. Usually, if we didn't have our tool, they would have detected this at the time of mate, which is not when you want to find these things. So we were able to show them ahead of time, and they fixed it before they tried to mate it. So we've seen some good value out of doing things like this. A big one at the moment for us is wiring install. New modern commercial airliners are insanely complicated with a lot of wiring. Some of the programs we're working on, the military platforms we're working on, have more wiring than we've ever put into an airplane before. So routing those wires, getting the harnesses in place, meeting separation requirements, things like that, become a real issue. So we've doing a couple things. The one on the left is a pilot we did last year. Actually, it was on an avionics cabinet. You can see it's showing all the wires. Usually we'd see one by one. It's showing connector locations and P-clamps, tie-down points, things like that. The image on the right is more recent. This is something we're working on one of our larger airframe platforms. We're going to be taking production data that already exists in 3D, and right now that data is viewed on paper, which is unfortunate. We're going to take that data and provide it to the electricians in real time on a wearable on the airplane. We're going to have that by the end of the year. Finally, the last use case we're really focusing on is training, and this example is using a HoloLens. It's in the Everett factory. You can see here we've crafted a 45-step training episode around how to install this one part. It's called a door sill. It goes over the two sections of a fuselage, goes over the join. And it's been particularly troublesome on some of our programs, and we've needed to get more people up to speed on how to do that job faster. So we've crafted this tool. We've been able to cut down the amount of time it takes to train somebody by around 4 times using this tool. They'll put the HoloLens on, they'll spend a couple of hours, they'll run through these 45 steps. We've modeled tooling. We've modeled tooling. It shows where drills go, shows where feeler gauges go. So really, it's just a matter of see and copy. It's very straightforward to do. So that's about all I have time for. Kind of a brief overview of some of the things we're working on. My contact information is here. Please feel free to reach out to me, email, call, anytime. I'll be glad to chat. A couple questions did come in on the app, so let's see here. A lot of questions came in. Okay, let's do the one from Kevin. What CAD software is used in your conversion, and what problems do you experience converting it for AR? So that's a big deal, obviously. CAD is all nerve surfaces, 3D design, tolerance, and design to tolerance. AR real-time rendering needs tessellated services, so everyone is struggling with this. How do we get from engineering models to real-time rendering in AR? We've tried a couple of things. We've used software from Akuno Polyworks, things like that. More recently, we're using more CATIA tessellation tools, but it's still manual. And everything we've done so far has been about exporting something from a CAD tool, tessellating, converting it, usually downsizing it, and then putting it onto our platform. This is not ideal, obviously, especially in terms of configuration control, because then the things you're displaying are not source controlled to the design. The one, as we move forward, I mentioned the project we're working on right now for the wiring. We're actually going to leverage a lot of work our IT group has done. They have already tied into the design tools we use, and in this case, it is CATIA. We have a visualization tool called IVT. It's the integrated visualization tool. All of our commercial platforms are available. All the 3D data is available through IVT. And we're going to leverage that work that they've done. So that is configuration control, and we can get it out in a tessellated format. So IT have done a lot of the heavy lifting for us there. We're just going to take that data, port it over a network to a wearable device. So we still have a lot of work to do, as everyone else does in this space, but I think we're making small steps. So I'm actually over time. I'll leave it there. I'll be around during lunch. Feel free to come grab me. Thank you.